You woke up this morning, and the world was already here. Light on the ceiling, the shape of the room, whatever sounds belong to wherever you are. You didn't assemble any of it. It was just given. The way it's been given every morning of your life. You've been seeing for as long as you can remember. Hearing, thinking, feeling. A steady stream of it, from before you had words for any of it, right up to this moment. And it's so constant, so much the background of everything, that there's a question you've probably never stopped to ask. Not what you see, not how the eye works. Something simpler and much stranger. What is the thing that sees? Not the eye. The eye is an organ, wet tissue, a lens, a nerve running back into the dark. On its own, it sees nothing. So what is it that's aware of the sight? Who is all of this happening to? It's a question that won't sit still. You reach for it, and it slips. And you're back to looking at things, instead of asking who's looking. Maybe, these last few years, you've tried to feel more at home inside your own life. You've learned to follow your breath when the panic climbs, to watch a thought arrive and let it go, instead of being dragged along behind it, to sort what you can change from what you can't, and set the rest down. And some of it helped. The surface got quieter. But if you're honest, something underneath stayed exactly where it was. You got better at managing your experience. You never found out who was having it. You learned, as people say, to be present. And you never quite asked what is present, what this awareness actually is. The one thing that has been with you your entire life, and the one thing you have never once turned around to face. There's a text, very old, that opens with exactly this question. By whom impelled does the mind fall upon its object? By whom yoked does the breath move first? By whose will do they speak speech? What God joins the eye and the ear? Listen to what's strange about it. It isn't asking how perception works. A modern person asks how. By what mechanism light becomes sight, how the nerve carries the signal. This asks who, by whom, as if behind all the machinery of perception there were someone the question is slowly trying to turn around and face. And here's what's strange. We still can't answer it. We can map the brain in extraordinary detail. We can describe the mechanisms of attention, memory, emotion. But the question of what is aware, who is having the experience at all, remains exactly where the Kena left it. Open. The people who asked this didn't ask it in a laboratory. They asked it sitting down, somewhere in northern India, the better part of 2,500 years ago, give or take a few centuries. They weren't trying to start anything. They were doing something quieter and odder than that. Sitting close to someone who might know, and asking out loud what a human being actually is. The records of those askings, half conversation, half poetry, came to be called the Upanishads. The word itself means something like sitting down near, sitting close enough to be told the thing that matters. And it may be one of the oldest versions we have of anyone asking this particular thing. Not how the world is built, what is looking out of it. Then the text stops explaining. It tells a story instead. The gods had won a great victory. There had been a war, the gods against the powers that stand against them, and the gods had won. And in the glow of it, they did what anyone does in the glow of a victory. They took the credit. Look what we did. Look what we are. Our strength, our triumph. They stood around in the warm light of their own greatness. What they didn't know was that the victory had never been theirs at all. The power that won it had moved through them from somewhere else. But they couldn't see that, because you don't tend to question a power while it's running in your favor. So, the story says, that power decided to show itself. Not by explaining. It appeared at the edge of where the gods were gathered. A presence, a figure. The text calls it a yaksha, a word for a spirit, a being, something uncanny. It simply stood there, strange, silent, impossible to place. And the gods felt the unease you feel near something you cannot name. What is that? They sent Agni to find out. Agni is fire itself, god of fire, eater of forests, one of the oldest and proudest powers there is. He strode up to the figure. "Who are you?" the figure asked. "I am Agni," Agni replied. "I am the one who knows all things born." "And what power is in you?" the figure asked. "I can burn anything. Everything on this earth, I can burn it all to nothing." The figure laid a single blade of dry grass on the ground in front of him. "Burn this." And Agni, fire, the eater of forests, gathered himself and rushed at the blade of grass with everything he had. Nothing. He could not burn it. He could not scorch it. He could not raise the faintest thread of smoke from one dry blade of grass. And he turned and went back to the others, shaken, with nothing to report but this: "I could not find out what it is." So they sent Vayu, the wind, god of the air, who carries everything before him, who moves what cannot be moved. He swept up to the figure. The figure asked, "Who are you?" "I am Vayu. I am the one who moves through all of space." The figure asked, "And what power is in you?" "I can carry anything away. Everything on this earth, I can sweep it off." The figure pointed at the same single blade of grass. "Move this." And Vayu, who flattens forests, who drives the sea up onto the land, threw himself at one blade of grass with the whole force of the wind, and could not move it, could not stir it, could not lift one edge of it from the ground. And he too turned back, undone, with nothing. Then Indra, the king of the gods, went himself. And as he came near, the figure simply vanished. Where it had stood, there was only open sky. But Indra stayed there, in the empty space where the presence had been. He didn't chase it. He didn't go back to boast. He stood still in the place of his own bewilderment and waited. And because he waited, something met him there. In the texts, it is a woman, radiant, called Uma, daughter of the mountains, and she has the bearing of someone who knows. He asked her the only question left to ask. That being, what was it? And she told him. That was Brahman. That was the real itself. The victory you were so proud of was never yours. It was Brahman's. You were exulting in a power you had only borrowed and calling it your own. It's a strange little story, and it's easy to read straight past it as myth. But notice what it's actually saying, and notice where it puts you. Fire cannot burn without something that is the fire of the fire. Wind cannot move without something that moves the wind. Every power in the story is real. Agni really can burn. Vayu really can move. And every power is borrowed. Each one runs on something underneath it that it didn't make, can't see, and keeps mistaking for itself. Now turn that toward yourself. You see, but the eye doesn't generate the sight. Something looks through it. You hear, but the ear is only an instrument. Something listens behind it. You think, and you take the thoughts to be you, the way the gods took the victory to be theirs. But the thoughts are happening to something. They're appearing in a kind of light you never switch on. That's simply on. That's been on your whole life. And like the gods, you've spent that whole life exulting in the borrowed power. My mind, my will, my self. And never once turned to face the thing it's all borrowed from. The text, having told the story, finally gives its answer to the question it opened with. And the answer is not the kind of answer you can hold in your hand. It doesn't name a thing. It says, it is the ear of the ear, the mind of the mind, the speech of speech, the breath of the breath, the eye of the eye, the ear of the ear, not a thing you could ever hear, the hearing by which all hearing happens, not anything you could see, the seeing behind the eye. You will never catch it as an object in your experience, for the same reason the gods couldn't catch the figure in theirs. For the same reason you can't bite your own teeth or look directly at your own looking. It isn't somewhere in the field of what you perceive. It's the one perceiving. And here the text does something honest, something I want to keep in front of you for this whole series. It refuses to let you turn this into a fact you now own. A little later, it says, almost as a warning, the one who thinks he knows it does not know it. The one who knows he doesn't, knows. Which sounds at first like a riddle built to frustrate you. But it isn't. It's exact. Anything you can know the way you know a fact, a date, a name, a definition, is an object, sitting out there in front of your attention. And this is not an object. It's what your attention is made of. The instant you think you've grasped it, what you're holding is one more thought about it. And the real thing is what's aware of that thought. It stays behind you no matter how fast you turn, not because it's hiding, because it's the one doing the turning. You can test the edge of this right now where you're sitting. Not as an exercise or meditation, but just for a second, as an experiment. You're aware. There's no doubt about that. Something is registering these words, this moment, the room around you. So turn toward it. Try to find the one who is aware. The actual awareness, the thing these words are appearing to right now. Notice that you can't quite locate it. There's no object there to find. You look for the seer and there's only more seeing. You reach for the one who's aware and there's just awareness, with nothing you can point to at the center of it. And yet it would be absurd to say nothing is there. It's the most certain thing there is. It's the single thing in your whole experience you cannot doubt. And it's the one thing you can never quite turn into a thing. The thing you just failed to find is what all of this is pointing at. You didn't have to believe anything to meet it. You just looked. It's nearer to you than your own hands, and you've been overlooking it for exactly as long as you've been alive. Precisely because it has been doing the looking. And this is why, if you've tried to quiet your mind and found that the quiet never reached all the way down, the reason might be simpler than it seemed. You were working on the contents, the thoughts, the feelings, the breath. And the question underneath was never about the contents. It was about the one they're all appearing to. The gods needed a blade of grass they couldn't burn to remember what they were standing on. Maybe you don't need anything that dramatic. Maybe you just need to let the question stay open a little longer than usual. To keep, somewhere at the back of your mind, the one you couldn't find when you went looking. And that is the thread this series will follow. A boy standing before death. A father dissolving salt in water. A warrior collapsing on a battlefield. A sage saying, with unbearable simplicity, "You are not what you take yourself to be." Different voices, different centuries. The same question returning in different forms. But this is where it begins. Before belief, before an answer, with one plain question, a question you can ask now and somehow never finish asking. Who is the one behind the eyes?